Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the Freethought Society's, whoops, I just covered myself up. Welcome to the Freethought Society's July meetup. I hope those of you who logged on early enjoyed the music that we were able to provide for you during the event. It was good chatting with you all and catching up. My name is Michael Stephen Martin, and it is my pleasure to be the Zoom coordinator for the Freethought Society and the co-host for today's event. Let me change this spotlight here. We're going to have a Q&A portion later, which I'll explain briefly. If you have questions for Mandisa during her presentation, please send them to me in the Zoom chat, and I will call upon you later in the order received. If you'd like for me to ask on your behalf, just preface your question with "please ask," and then I'll know that I'll read it for you. We want to stay on target today with our timing, so I'm going to officially start by turning over to Margaret Downey, the head of the Freethought Society, and I'm going to spotlight her for her opening presentation. Welcome. Oh, Margaret, please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
There we go.
There you are.
And guess what started to play? The second song.
The music. Oh, do you want to stop share? Do you want to stop share of your screen so we don't have the itinerary up?
I'm trying to make it stop share.
I'll stop it for you. There we go.
Yeah, I got it. But I want to go back. I want to share because I have a second.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Darn. Sorry, everybody. I have a second slide I wanted to show.
I'm hearing music now.
Yeah, that's the second song that was supposed to be playing. So I guess we'll stop the share. And I'll do the presentation without the second slide that I had hoped to have on the screen for you. I'll put the second slide up maybe after Mandisa's over. So thank you, Michael, and welcome everyone to the Freethought Society's July 11th Zoom meeting. The Freethought Society serves as a local forum in which freethinkers can meet virtually, socialize, and exchange ideas, thanks to the Zoom meetings set up by Michael Stephen Martin. As freethinkers, our minds are not restrained by superstitions or prescribed dogmas that tell us what we can and cannot think. While some today would suppress independent thought, freethinkers know that the unrestricted exchange of ideas has been the primary force of progress in all civilizations. As freethinkers, we want to better ourselves and our community through the unrestricted application of reason and human endeavor to address the local and global problems that confront us. I had a slide on the screen that showed a list of our committees. But if you'd like to see the list, please go to our website and look on our homepage, and you'll see all of these wonderful volunteer opportunities available to you. And we'd love for you to participate in some way. The Freethought Society is a nonprofit 501c3 educational organization, and this is why we hope you will be moved to make a donation today. A donation link will appear in the chat section a few times during this event, but if you miss the link, it's very, very simple. It's ftsociety.org/donate. Now, to introduce today's speaker is Freethought Society board member, Patrick Innes.
Thank you, Margaret. I really appreciate this opportunity to introduce Mandisa. I'm really looking forward to being a board member of the Freethought Society. I'm kind of the new guy here, so you know, I imagine most of you don't know who I am, probably never even heard of me, but you know, I hope to change that, and I'll try to really perform well for the Freethought Society, because I know you guys are doing a lot of good work. And Margaret, you're you know, really dynamic and effective leader. We've known each other for a number of years back, dating back to our activism involving the Boy Scout discrimination, and that, you know, with mixed success, but I think we had a real impact. So I see by the schedule you've allocated me 5 minutes to do the introduction of Mandisa. I don't think it's going to take all that long, but I'd like to pad it out, if you allow me, with just a little personal anecdote involving my my experience as a one of my experiences as a Black atheist. It was a few years ago. I happened to be walking through a airport. It was actually Dallas Fort Worth, and I was as I was walking, from one gate to another, I was changing planes to come back to Seattle. I was approached by some type of security guard. I don't know if he was Homeland Security or whatever, I can't recall. But anyway, he was a white gentleman, middle-aged, walked up to me and said, "I just wanted to thank you for speaking to our Heavenly Father every day," which I was surprised at first when he walked toward me. I thought I'd left something at the, on the airplane, or, I'd dropped something or something like that, something routine. But I was completely surprised when he basically accused me of being probably a Christian, I guess. So anyway, I turned to him and I said, "Well, I never speak to him." And he responded and said, "No, I can see it in your eyes." So he was basically wanted to have an argument with me about whether I was a believer or not, which was interesting. But, I finally convinced him that I was actually an atheist. But it pointed out to me one of the things about being a Black freethinker is that you were kind of subjected to this. You're still within the confines of the stereotype of Black people, one of which is that we are more religious than other people. And, in our society, you think that'd be a good thing, but it really isn't, because it's tied to a lot of negative stereotypes too. We're very superstitious, we're scared of ghosts, all these types of things come into play. So frequently Black freethinkers are kind of viewed as unicorns, even within Black society. I've had people tell me I've never met an atheist before. Quite possible, I guess. They never met anybody that they knew was an atheist because of the stigma. But anyway, I think Mandisa Thomas, our guest today, is doing an effective job of combating a lot of these stereotypes. I did have the pleasure of hearing Mandisa a couple of months ago. The Seattle Atheist Church hosted a talk that involved Mandisa, and she laid out a lot of exciting ideas, and in her philosophy and approach to Black non-belief. So let me just dive into the Mandisa's bio here. I'll pretty much give you the boilerplate here. It's pretty straightforward. And if you want to know, if after the meeting you're as impressed as I was when I heard her, you can find a lot of stuff online, YouTube videos of other speeches Mandisa's given. But she's a native of New York City. I understand she lives in Atlanta now. And as you know, she's the president of Black Nonbelievers Incorporated, also the founder. She wasn't really apparently brought up with strong religious indoctrination, but of course, in our society, she's been heavily exposed to Christianity, also some exposure to Black nationalism and Islam. She's been on television, made quite a few media appearances, CBS Sunday Morning, CNN, Playboy. She's been in the Humanist magazine, Jet magazine. She's been on numerous podcasts, the Humanist Hour and Ask an Atheist, and also in the documentaries Contradiction and My Week in Atheism. She currently serves on the board of the American Humanist Association and American Atheists. Mandisa was the Unitarian Universalist Humanist Association's 218 Person of the Year, the Freedom from Religion Foundation Freethought Heroine for 2019, and the Secular Student Alliance's 2019 Backbone Award winner. That last one sounds like a very impressive award. As president of Black Nonbeliever, Mandisa works to encourage more Black people to come out and stand strong with their non-belief in the face of strong religious overtones. Welcome, Mandisa.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for the wonderful introduction. And thank you, Margaret and Michael, for having me. I've known Margaret now for a few years. We've been connected since 2013, ever since I started attending the secular leadership summits that take place every year with the heads of the national secular organizations. And so I'm really am happy to be here with you all. I know we're all still in the midst of dealing with the pandemic, so I hope everyone is well considering. And I really hope that you enjoy this presentation and that you take something from it that you didn't know before and take it into your future endeavors and your future activism, because this is an area that is extremely important to all of us. So I'm going to share my screen now. Basically, as Patrick said, you know, and he is absolutely correct when it comes to the assumption of what it means to be Black, a person of color, and be a unbeliever. There is so much when it comes to our communities and what it means to be stigmatized, especially in this country, if you are Black and especially if you are a woman. The expectation or the assumption is that you're religious, that you believe, especially if you live in the South. And a huge, you know, one of the most gratifying parts of my work in founding and developing Black nonbelievers, and also engaging other organizations and other people, is seeing that there are more of us, because that was the purpose of starting the organization, is that we knew there were more of us out here, especially in this age, in this day and age. You know, we were trying to figure out where more folks were hiding. And that has been a huge part of the work within my organization. And, you know, the subject that we're here to talk about today, which is women of color beyond belief, is basically a combination of that. It has been, you know, it has been a result of the work that has been taking place for over almost 10 years now with the organization. It has been taking place even before I got involved in this community. But now we're also showing that there's more to come. And as we see the shifts within the secular community, as we're seeing the shifts in society now, there's definitely going to be more of us in the future, and everyone needs to be paying more attention. So I'm going to get a little bit more into about me. And like I said, Patrick did a wonderful introduction. I am a New York City native, born and raised in Jamaica, Queens. For those of you who are familiar, was raised right next to York College, you know, which is a part of the City University of New York system. I am actually also a graduate of the very famous High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts, LaGuardia High School, which is right behind Juilliard at Lincoln Center. It's as a result of the combined campuses. I am a classically trained singer. I was a vocal major in high school. I kind of sing off and on, and I was glad that Margaret asked me to sing music, because this also is a huge part of the work in this movement, is sharing the creativity and talent that I was raised and had developed during my childhood, as well as my love for music, which I do enjoy sharing with everyone. And also, my upbringing was pretty secular. I was primarily raised in the Black conscious community. So, which means I learned about Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, a lot of key people that were crucial to resistance movements in the Black community in the United States. So that was my upbringing was very, very, very Afrocentric, very, very Black centered. And that's something that I am extremely proud of. I was not raised with this idea that Black was inferior, even though I learned a lot about the systemic issues and systemic injustice that have been perpetuated against the Black community. But I was never raised to think that we were inferior to anyone. And I was exposed to some religion through my voice instructor. I started being trained as a singer when I was 4 years old. So I had this peripheral view of religion, and it was always kind of weird to me to go into churches and actually feel the sense of restriction and not necessarily learning much of anything. That always struck me as a child. My family and I moved to the Atlanta, Georgia area. My husband and our daughter at the time, we've since had 2 sons. We moved from New York at the end of 1997 to the Atlanta, Georgia area, where one of the first questions that you're asked in the South is, what church do you go to? And I think that, and even within any Black community, no matter where you are, there's a heavy presence of religion, even in your major cities, including New York. But in the South, it is extremely prevalent, which is why you see a heavy presence of secular activism here, which is something that is really, really good. So over the years in establishing our family and also reaffirming and reassessing my secular and atheist identity in particular, and I will say this, that I unapologetically identify as atheist, and I know that many of us choose to identify interchangeably. Some of us may prefer to use other terms, but I strongly emphasize saying atheist because this is how we break stigma. So in 2011, founded Black Nonbelievers. I also transitioned to full-time activism because over the years, as things became more busy and I became more involved, it was determined that this is where my time and dedication was most needed. And at the time that BN was founded, I was working full-time as the event services manager at the Centers for Disease Control's main campus here in the Atlanta area. So yes, here it is. I'm married, raising a family, starting an organization, getting involved with the movement, and working full-time. But in 2018, like I said, things started to change, and it was determined, and especially because the demand for my appearances increased, it was time to let that particular job go. So in addition to now running Black Nonbelievers full-time, still on a volunteer basis, by the way, I do presentations, but I also, in order to supplement income, I do have a Patreon subscription. I'm just going to throw that in there. I'll mention that again. And you could subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month to help support my activism. Because again, this is where my time and dedication is the most, and it isn't just the most needed. It is where I find the most fulfillment. So as Patrick said too, I currently serve on the boards for American Atheists and the American Humanist Association. I previously served on the boards for the Secular Coalition for America and Foundation Beyond Belief, and also the 2016 Reason Rally Coalition. Margaret and myself served on that board for the 2016 Reason Rally. And as Patrick said, I'm the recipient of 3 awards so far. And also upcoming this year, I will be receiving the Irving and Annabelle Wolfson Award, which is presented by the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Worcester in Massachusetts. Of course, due to COVID-19, it was supposed to take place in April, but it's been postponed until October. And I will just share one thing. I am the first person of color to receive that award and the first Black woman to receive that award. They've been presenting this now for 7 years. So it is an honor to set some precedents for certain things. So as much as I got into this movement because it was liberation for me, it was liberating to find other non-believers and especially other Black atheists but to help cultivate and develop this community more was something that I wasn't really expecting, to do. So, all the newcomers, please be careful because you will be pulled in because this is something that, as organizers, we're always looking for new blood because it is needed. But, just be careful because you can and will be pulled in as soon as you can, as soon as you get involved. So just beware of that. But I am happy that the work is being recognized. It is an honor. And it just shows I really, really am really, really proud and happy to be in this movement. And so I'm happy to share definitely an aspect of that work with you for the next hour or so. So Black Nonbelievers as an organization started in 2011. And from the start, we've always been event-based. We're very, very, we like to meet in person because that is where a lot of communities are built. Of course, right now we're having to supplement that through virtual events, which is great. But our community does a lot of virtual events, where I know there are some people who've had to adapt to this form of communicating, not so much the atheist or secular community, because, this is something that we've kind of had the heads up on. But as an organization, we're still very big on meeting in person. And because of my background as an event services manager and also spending almost 20 years in hospitality, it was important to cultivate that aspect of our organization, which means meeting in person and engaging people who wouldn't necessarily think we exist, who necessarily didn't think we existed. So a few of our previous events were the Reason Rally after party after the 2012 event, which featured Graydon Square. We also co-facilitated the Blackout Secular Rally in 2013, along with Black Atheists of America, which was one of the premier active Black organizations at the time. We also hosted our 5th anniversary celebration in the Atlanta, Georgia area in 2016. And we've also started hosting a cruise convention, which is now titled BNC Con in 2017. And when I tell you that our events are very, very much, it isn't just about building up the community and representation of Black atheists, it's also a great opportunity for you to hear speakers, activists, authors that you might not hear within the mainstream secular community, i.e. your white males that we hold so near and dear, some for good reasons, others, we won't get into that right now. But it is a great opportunity. And this is something that we've always done. We've collaborated for research studies. We've collaborated on, and as mentioned, we've been featured in the media. And so this is just another aspect of our work. And again, we put on events that bring people together where you're being educated and you're being more informed, especially about the Black atheist demographic. So now we get to the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference. And also Women of Color Beyond Belief as presenters, speakers, and as members of the secular community. So it was a joint venture by Black Nonbelievers, Black Skeptics Los Angeles, and the Women's Leadership Project. The last 2 organizations are headed by Sakibu Hutchinson, who is based in Los Angeles. And I know Margaret has featured her as a speaker previously. Now, she and I and other Black leaders in the movement had been formulating our relationships, our working relationships, and supporting each other's work. And so in 2018, we were having Sakivu, myself, and Bridget Crutchfield, who is the head of Black Nonbelievers Detroit affiliate and one of our board members. After some events that we had held separately, we were talking one day, and Sakivu was saying that she always envisioned a women's conference. And so with my background, and now I will say expertise in putting events together, putting events together and putting them together successfully, we said now is the time to do it. And so we co-produced and created and presented the first ever Women of Color Beyond Belief conference, which took place last year from October 4th through the 6th in Chicago. Now, prior to that event, many of you may be familiar with the Women in Secularism conferences that took place that were facilitated by the Center for Inquiry. There were also the Secular Women Work conferences that were facilitated by the organization Secular Woman. And also Black Nonbelievers over the course of our, over the course of the years, we have been making sure that we've been highlighting particularly the voices of women of color. And so this event was the first ever to feature all women of color, atheists, humanists, freethinkers, skeptics, secularists, etc. Now, while a lot of people may be asking themselves, well, where are all the black folks, where are all the people of color, where are all the women? We have been engaging them over the past few years, and it was now time for us to put together this event where there were just all, and I tell you, there are a number of us. There's definitely more of us out here, and there are enough women of color in this movement doing work to the point where we could have a conference where they would be featured and their work would be spotlighted. And to kick this conference off, or one of the foundations for it was the July-August 2018 issue of the Humanist magazine. And as you can see here, and also that I have in my hand, and if you're members of the American Humanist Association and you subscribe to their magazine, you may have this issue. And if you don't, I suggest you contacting them to get to get your copy. So this is the first time with almost their 80-year existence that they've had multiple Black humanist women on their cover. Now, previously, they've honored Alice Walker as the Humanist of the Year. They've honored A. Philip Randolph as the Humanist of the Year. And from what I understand, they may have had Alice Walker on the cover of the Humanist at one time. But this is still one of the first times, and definitely the first time, that they've had multiple Black women on the cover of one of their magazines. And so with this groundbreaking issue, we also came together to put this conference together, because again, as you see that there are 5 of us here, as I said before, there are more of us. So we are the 5 fierce humanists from the July-August 2018, and the article is still active. It is still online on the Humanist website. And I'm actually going to try to find here the foreword that was written by Chris Cameron, who is the author of the book Black Freethinkers, A History of African American Secularism. I will find that in a moment, but again, as you can see here, it was just amazing to have all 5 of us there in the same space. So the goals for the conference were to highlight the perspectives and work of women of color in the secular community. That is goal number 1. Also, to increase visibility and opportunities for women of color in the secular community. One of the best parts about, especially in-person conferences and events, or even if they're virtual, is that one appearance can lead to more. It can lead to another and more down the line. Especially for those of us who are either practitioners or who are authors and etc. So this is a good opportunity for other organizations who weren't aware that we existed to be featured more than one time, because it does take more than one. And also to encourage future support for us women and the organizations that are facilitated by people of color, for example, BN, and also those who support people of color within their organizations. And so while my organization, of course, is Black-led and Black women-led, there are some secular organizations that employ people of color within their movements, and so within their organizations. And so it is important that your dollars go to support all of us. And one of the best things about what we've done is that we've tried to increase the leadership pipeline within Black non-believers, but we also engage other people of color within those organizations. So it's very much collaborative, it's very much community building, and it's very much about being uplifting, lifting each other up in the work that we're doing. So some of the topics of discussion at the conference last year they may not necessarily have, they're not your typical topics at your secular conferences, much of which center around church-state separation, atheist identity, and discrimination against non-believers. Which are also, and also maybe science, based in science education, which is very, very important. But some of the topics that were discussed at the conference were criminal justice and reform, coming out as atheists, because that is still a huge deal, especially coming from the Black community. We were discussing end-of-life preparation, intersectional feminism, the relevancy of the secular movement to women of color, because this is still a huge issue, secular organizing, secular parenting. Many of us are parents, myself included. I have 3 children. Surviving domestic abuse as a non-believer, because that is another real life area that many people go through, and many more. And also, in addition to the wonderful presentations that we had, we also did a service project, which we called Secure the Bag. And it was spearheaded by Foundation Beyond Belief. And so after the presentations and panels were done on the last day, we packed thousands of meals that benefited marginalized communities, primarily people of color, in the greater Chicago area. And the best part about the event was that the conference participation wasn't required. So you could have come in and not attended the conference at all and still volunteered with us. Although I think everyone who was there, everyone who volunteered was a part of the conference. And as you can see, you see Sakivu Hutchinson over there partaking as well. I know I participated. So many of the speakers also participated in this portion of the conference. Now, I know that there were other organizations that had done this previously. American Atheists, I know the Pennsylvania Atheist and Humanist organization had started doing this a few years ago. And so in working with and connecting with those organizers, we were able to duplicate the same thing for our event, and to make sure that the beneficiaries were people of color in the area. So not only did you get great information from the conference, you also had an opportunity to actually do something to help benefit the local community while you were there. And speaking of which, some of the sponsors for the conference last year. And I was very, 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 very happy to see the number of organizations that, and also individuals that came together to help us make this a successful event. So our major sponsor was the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And for those of you who aren't aware, FFRF does challenge, they do fight church and state separation in the courts. They also have scholarship programs, and they have established separate scholarships or special scholarships for students of color. If you get their magazine, Freethought Today, if you get their newspaper, you often see the calls for essays, and you do see them for the students of color that they award scholarships to. And so they were our major sponsor. They also facilitated a focus group while they were there. And they wanted to get perspectives. They had a marketing company that came out and generated perspectives from some of the attendees, in which they received a $100 gift card for. I wish I could have participated in that, but it was nice to see that they had this extra offer, especially for some of the attendees who signed up to give their feedback. And like I said before, it was Foundation Beyond Belief, which also helped co-facilitate the Secure the Bag Meal Service project. You had American Atheists, the American Humanist Association, Camp Quest, Secular Woman, the Secular Coalition for America, Secular Student Alliance, Recovering from Religion. So I could go on and on and on about some of the organizations that pulled together to support and sponsor this event. And once again, there were a number of individuals who sponsored and contributed. Because one thing I will tell you about our events, but this event in particular, most of your conferences that you attend, you usually have to pay an entrance fee, and you usually have to purchase your meals separately. All of the meals with the conference were included. And I'm happy to say that with the sponsorships and the support that we received, we were able to keep the cost nominal and provide and include breakfast, lunch, snacks, as well as the dinner and reception. That was a separate ticket, but we also had a combined ticket for that. And that is something that that is something that is noted, because I know I can appreciate purchasing, paying for an event, and I know that I don't have to run and go and look for food outside of the event. So to have everything in one space, and it was a beautiful location, and it was just a plus in that. And the one thing that I like to do, especially in my area of hospitality, is to try to make sure people are taken care of. And this is a fundamental difference as to who is running events. So that is something that should definitely be taken note of. So yes, through all of our sponsors, through all of the contributions, we were able to have all of the meals included with the event. And so the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference for 2020, actually, I thought I had the correct slide here, but it is being postponed due to COVID-19. It is being postponed to 2021. It was originally scheduled for this year on the last weekend of September, from the 25th through the 27th, but we're going to postpone it to 2021. And so those details are pending, but we do want you to stay updated, because it will be at the same location, the Chicago Marriott by Midway Airport. And all of these same features will apply. We will be offering early bird registration rates, childcare options, payment plan information. Now, many people don't think that for conferences that it's almost like, how do you put a conference on layaway, right? But we do try to take people's financial consideration, actually we try to take people's financial situations into consideration. And this is something that as a community has often been overlooked. So we decide, we made a decision that if people needed to pay their admission fee in installments, then they would be able to do so. And of course, sponsorship opportunities are always available. And we also had people who donated to give people the opportunity to attend who wouldn't necessarily, who couldn't afford it previously. So we were able to do that as well. And so these are just some of the speakers that we will have lined up for next year as well. They were supposed to be this year, but again, these are more amazing women who are involved not just with Black nonbelievers, but also in the secular movement that you may not be aware of, but that you need to be. And so we have been asked this question: can anyone attend? And so as you can see here, the checkbox is yes. Just as with most events that are open to the general public, so is this one. However, when people see an organization like Black Nonbelievers, or something, or an event that is featured, that has women of color featured, or a certain demographic featured, we're always asked the question of, well, you know, I'm so-and-so, can I attend too? And the main purpose of this conference is for everyone to attend. Now, while our speakers are women of color, and yes, there is something to be said about, you know, having an event that definitely hopes to draw out more people of color, because it is you know, that is our target audience. We need everyone there, because everyone in this movement, not just in this movement, but overall, needs to be hearing the perspectives and also hearing and seeing the work of the women in this movement. Now, I will say notable exceptions are anyone who intends to derail the conference focus, believers and non-believers alike. And I will share that there was a gentleman in the general area on the first night of the event after the reception who wasn't aware of, you know, our organizations, and he attempted to proselytize to us. And, you know, at many secular events, and, you know, when people come by and they ask us questions, there's often a defense. You know, there's often this, there's often this perspective of, well, you really don't not believe in God, do you? But, you know, and then it does at times appear to be, it is condescending at times. But I'm very, very big on not entertaining that for a long period of time, because there are plenty of areas and plenty of people that you can go and try to push your beliefs on, and we're not one of them. If you are not interested in having objective dialogue, or if your intention is to diminish and demean, you know, the work of the people that are the focus, then yeah, you don't need to be there. And do we still need support? Can you still support this event? Absolutely. If you ever put on an event, you know that it takes money, and they can be very costly, especially in-person conferences, because what do? We cover, you know, we cover travel, we cover, you know, things, you know, we cover the expenses for speakers, and also for, you know, for supplies and everything. And I will say that we have some really, really, really nice materials to provide for the conference attendees. And I'm very, very proud of that, because one of the things that we love to do is provide style with substance. And I'm unapologetic about that. And that could be from me being a New Yorker and just being who I am, and the creativity. I love that, you know, that comes through the events that we put on. So do we still need support? Yes. And this will be very, very important for us for the event next year that we're going to be hosting. So you can visit our website at womenofcolorbeyondbelief.com, our websites, and blacknonbelievers.org to support the conference in particular, and also to support the work for Black nonbelievers. So in conclusion, and where do we go from here? At most of your secular events, you usually don't see this many people of color in attendance. And you definitely do not see this many women of color or people of color facilitating and speaking. And I will tell you that this is a part of the magic that we bring to the table. And in doing this work, and having the tremendous opportunity and honor to have engaged so many people, because I am just but one of many voices in this community. I am just but one of many leaders that are present and that are to come in this community. And so the question becomes, how do we support each other? How do we continue to amplify the work and the voices of the people doing it and not just relegating them to the background? How do we continue to uplift the voices and the perspectives of women as not just supporters to the men in this movement? Because I can tell you that even with all of the all of the appearances that I've had and all of the work that I have done and the awards that I have received, which wasn't the end goal for me. But I cannot tell you how secondary it seems that my presence is to other people. And so if I feel that as someone who is now considered prominent in this community, you just imagine how the other women in this movement feel. And it is important that we take note of who is engaged, who we are engaging, who is coming into our organizations, that the people of color in your organizations are not just being tokenized, that they are sufficiently a part of your leadership, that they are sufficiently visible, and that they feel valued, and that we feel valued. And I will tell you that in our spaces, and for everyone who attended last year's event, it didn't matter who you were. If you were a Black woman, if you were a Black man, if you were another person of color, male, woman, trans, everyone in that space felt welcomed and validated. And that is what we bring to the table, especially as an organization, because this is about upliftment and building up our communities, especially because some people lose them when they leave their religious communities. And this community, the religious community, doesn't have the monopoly on fellowship, on community, on bridge building, as well as activism. There is a lot of good work that is taking place and that is being done. And I guarantee you that this conference, and there were some amazing pictures taken by both Bria Crutchfield and Josiah Mannion, who takes a lot of pictures at the American Atheist Convention. You may have seen his work before. He captures some amazing visuals. And when I tell you that it was an honor and a pleasure to bring this conference forward and to actually bring it to fruition, because this is a part of what I do. I don't just like to sit around and wait for things to happen. It is up to us to make them happen, but it's also important for people to know that you must support us in doing that, because in our communities, we're already at a disadvantage. The Black community is at a disadvantage, and we're seeing this now in our current climate of activism. We're dealing with the historical factor. We're still dealing with systemic and structural racism and injustice. We're still dealing with how to change that. And so this doesn't happen with us just pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, even though we have never been averse to hard work. That has never been something that has been a stranger to us. The Black community and other communities of color, we speak of resistance, we speak of rebellion, and it's excellence. There's a lot of excellence that comes from us. And guess what? This is no different. And as a matter of fact, it's going to be even more so, because we are going to continue to do this into the future. So where we go from here is to keep moving forward, is to keep amplifying our voices, keep making sure that we stay involved in the community, speaking to the issues and working on the issues that are relevant to us, and not just to us, but to everyone, because I guarantee you the issues that affect the Black communities affect all of us. And so now is a time, it's been past the time, but there's definitely a good time to continue to support those of us who are working in this movement, who are changing the landscape, who are changing the narrative, disrupting narratives overall, but making sure that our voices are just as prominent as those who came before us, so that we are paving more of a way and making more of a foundation for those to come after us. So thank you all very much. This concludes the initial portion of the presentation. And if you'd like, you can visit the Black Nonbelievers YouTube channel to see the recorded presentations from the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference last year. And so again, you're seeing many of the presenters, the speakers and organizers that are a part of our organization and a part of this movement. And if you have never heard of them before, hopefully you will hear more from them, and also feel free to reach out to them to have them featured at your events. And so before we go into the questions, I did find the introduction to the Humanist magazine article that was written by Chris Cameron. It is a well-known fact that Black women has served as the backbone of the Black church since its inception. Black women raised funds for church buildings, evangelized for their churches around the world, and constituted the majority of members in denominations such as the African American Episcopal Church. It should come as no surprise, then, that Black women have made the modern Black Freethought movement possible. Among the most significant developments in this movement over the past 30 years has been its institutionalization, and here, as always, Black women have played leading roles. Whether it has been the establishment of local groups like the Black Skeptics Los Angeles, founded by Sakibu Hutchinson, or the creation of national organizations such as Black Nonbelievers, Inc., founded by Mandisa Thomas, African American women have indelibly stamped their imprint on the Freethought movement. They have pushed both Black and white freethinkers to broaden their conceptions of humanism, and have shown that despite arguments to the contrary, feminism is not only compatible with humanism, but is also a central part of what it means to be a humanist. The Black women freethinkers featured here, as well as the thousands who aren't, push us to consider the central role of social justice activism in both our freethought activities and in our daily lives. So thank you all very, very much. Again, I highly recommend that you research that article, and there may be an opportunity to share the link in the chat before this presentation is over. So thank you all once again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the session. And now I think we can open it for questions.
Thank you very much, Mandisa. I think right now would probably be a good time for a big round of applause from everyone.
Thank you, Mandisa.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to turn it back over to my co-host for the event, the head of the Freethought Society, Margaret Downey, for some more comments.
Thank you, Mandisa. Your presentation contained style and substance, so we appreciate it. Before we open the question and answer section of this presentation, I would like to remind the audience that the Freethought Society depends on donations to continue offer educational programs and speakers who enlighten and motivate, just like Mandisa did for us today. So please see the chat section of the Zoom for a direct link to the Freethought Society's donation page, and any donation amount would be appreciated. And now Michael Stephen Martin will tell you how to participate in the question and answer session.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't have you spotlighted there. I will get you next time. So for the Q&A section, the way we're going to do this, some of you have already started. If you have a question for Mandisa, please send it to me in the chat, and I will read them to her or have you read them to her as I receive them. If you would like me to ask on your behalf, please preface your question with "please ask," and I'll read for you. And if you would just like to ask yourself, I will call on you and spotlight you as we do that. So I do have some right now. Let me pull up the first question. I'm going to spotlight Marjorie, who had a question early on. I'll just ask it since it was a real quick one. I think you used the term, Mandisa used the term atheist church, and Marjorie was asking if you would please explain what that means.
That was Patrick. Patrick used that in his introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. So,
Okay. And I just,
maybe would
and my
Patrick
ears
like
perked
to?
up, and I just really wanted to hear more about that. Okay.
yeah, so the Seattle Atheist Church, which from what I understand was formerly Sunday Assembly Seattle. They have been jokingly dubbed the Atheist Church because what they do in their programming is, there's some singing. It's in-person congregation. And I know that there are some terms that are really associated with religion. And so for some of us, it can be a bit off-putting. But the Sunday Assembly, I actually like the Sunday Assembly because it's almost everything you would do. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's church related. But, there's singing, there's a band, there's motivational readings, there's speakers, there's fellowship, there's food. But it's everything that you might experience in a church setting, but without the religious dogma. And so that particular organization dubbed themselves the Seattle Atheist Church because I'm not sure if they actually do the music programming like the Sunday Assembly does, but they certainly do host a lot of, they're doing more Zoom events now. And one thing I can say that they're doing more now of is they're hosting a lot of sessions that are centered around racial justice. They're having discussions around that, which I'm seeing more of in a lot of secular spaces, which is important. So they're going beyond the one presentation that they had with me and other people of color that they've had previously, and actually starting to present and do more programming centered around that. Because there are a number of people who think that that racial justice isn't relevant to the secular community, and it really is. Because if you call yourself a humanist and without the dogma of religion, you really do see how our human lives impact each other. So I'm happy to say that they have been actually putting their foot forward in having discussions and more work around racial justice efforts.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Glenn. Glenn would like to know how many attendees were at the Women of Color conference last year.
So over in all, there were over there was a combined total of a little over 100 people there, which for the space, we anticipated about 150, close to 200. Of course, with any event, there are some people who couldn't make it, but yeah, there were over 100 people in attendance there. So we had a really, really nice turnout for the first time.
Okay. Let's see. Our next question comes from, let's see. Glenn also had another question regarding reaching out to East Asian atheists. Mandisa, do you have any comments on that?
So the focus of my organization is not explicitly Black atheists, but that is where, that's where my focus is. So for East Asian, we did have some Southeast Asian women of color that were at the conference, and also women from Asian descent. So there was, just like similar to what we did with Black Nonbelievers, there may need to be an organization formed. I'm not sure who is familiar with ex-Muslims of North America, because I know some Asians are former Muslim. So I think that for all of us here, it's going to be important for our organizations to be welcoming to everyone, and Black Nonbelievers is welcoming to everyone. However, if you want to reach a specific demographic, you may need to, there may be an organization that may need to be, that may need to be formed, or you may want to start by featuring, you know, a speaker that may be the catalyst for forming an organization like that. Like, for example, you also have Hispanic American Freethinkers, which represents the Hispanic secular community. And so it is very much possible to start an organization that is specific. And as a matter of fact, it's needed. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. And see, our next question, Marjorie has asked me to ask, do you partner with faith-based organizations in the struggle for needed social change? I think about how visible church and clergy were in the civil rights movement and in the current Black Lives Matter, et cetera.
Well, it's interesting, and this brings me to an event that we're actually going to be having on our Facebook and YouTube pages live next week. We're going to be having a candid discussion with you know, some of our secular leaders, as well as some who represent faith-based perspectives about Christianity and its role in white supremacy. Now, I tend to argue against the credit that the church is given to the civil rights movement, because it's often lauded and loaded. There were a number of humanist activists. There were a number of sure, it was very, very much an interfaith you know, movement, but the church actually did not play as big of a role as they would like you to think. And they're actually guilty of obscuring the role of humanists and non-believers in that movement as well. And so there are opportunities for us. We have appeared with, you know, with some religious folks. And I spoke on a panel with the Religious Freedom Center last year, which was titled Disrupt the Narrative, centering African-American perspectives on religious freedom. And so it was very the dialogue was interfaith. So we have had some opportunities to, you know, to engage, but as far as actually going out of our way to work with churches, and especially after we've seen them now, you know, they're having prayer protests and calling them peaceful protests, but they're rooted in prayer. So something like that is a bit off-putting to me in particular. Mm-hmm. And so working with organizations that are active and that are actually, you know, that don't have faith at their center, even if they are religious personally, if faith is not at their center, then absolutely. You know, those opportunities are always there. And if they're not going to be weirded out or looking at us like we have two heads because we're an atheist or secular organization. So we're still navigating that part. We've made some headway over the years, but as far as you know, having this conversation about Christianity and whites, which is happening in some religious spaces, but it's not happening in a way where we're actually you know, that we're actually reassessing the Black community's relationship with the very religion that was used to weaponize against us. So we're going to be having that discussion on this coming Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. via our Facebook and YouTube pages. So we hope you tune in for that. But to answer the question, you know, to give a short answer, there has been some headway, but I do tend to beat back against this idea that the church was just so influential that they're absolutely needed in, you know, in these resistance movements.
Excellent. Okay, our next question comes from Tylon Washington, who didn't mention if Tylon would like to. Oh, are you there, Tylon? No, maybe not. I asked Tylon. I'm sorry, I don't know who that is. If they would like to read their question or have me do it on their behalf. I didn't hear back. So if you're there, please say something. If not, I'll ask on your behalf.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh,
Is my mic working?
Yes, Tylon. Okay.
Oh,
do you
hi.
want, Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you so much, Mandisa, for inviting me to this, by the way. That's what I want to say first, and I think it was a wonderful presentation. How do you build capacity, like in this whole, in an atmosphere of COVID? And did you think about still perhaps having this conference that you're postponing in September, but instead of postponing it, maybe having it on Zoom?
Yeah, so I think thank you for asking that, Talon, and thank you for joining us. I think a lot of us are getting zoomed out this year. There are, there are a lot of us that are hosting online events, and the organizers and I have decided to, there is a lot of power in people, and there is a lot of affirmation in hosting in-person events. And so we've considered doing that, but it really, really makes an impact when you have this type of event in person. It really does. I mean, even as, at BN, we've been hosting, some Zoom events, we've been doing this on a regular basis, but it really, really is impactful, and it does better support our events when people are there in person. Because the one thing I will say about our community that we need work on is our social skills. And sometimes having online and virtual events can be a bit, they can kind of jade you. It can make you very comfortable. It can put you in a place where, you're not effectively engaging in person. And so while we do, while we're utilizing this platform while we can, and I think it's extremely important, this type of event is much, much better experienced in person, because it is very, very impactful to see the audience, to see the speakers, and to see the women in person. And so, we just decided that to postpone it to next year so that people can get that experience for this event.
All right, thank you very much. We've got a a question from Catherine. Yeah, your video's on. Thank you, Catherine. Go ahead.
Hi, Mandisa. I just want to say thanks for this conference thing. I was really looking forward to when I found out about this movement a little bit through Steph Andrews' video, Black Nonbelievers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's how I found out about this whole thing in the first place, is his video. So I guess this is something to do with that too. This is the same group a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we are one of the organization, or the primary organization that facilitates that.
Cool. All right, so my question is kind of a silly question, but how do you feel about movies like Sister Act Now, or like that most of you come from like the church choir?
It was entertainment. Interestingly enough, gospel was never one of my favorite genres. And I know that might get my black card revoked even for saying that. But gospel has never been one of my favorite genres of music. And I say this being a classically trained musician and being a music lover. I'm pretty sure it appeals to, a lot of people. And in my journey in coming out of, because I was indoctrinated, even though I wasn't formally raised religious, I was indoctrinated into, certain thought processes that I had to unlearn. But when I hear that, when I hear some of the songs and when I see some of the entertainment, I'm just like, oh boy, some people love it. Some of us not as much. I mean, I thought I only saw Sister Act 2.
I only saw the first one. I never saw the second one.
Second one was a lot more musical, and I thought, the singing was amazing. And there's a lot of good talent, especially that comes from the Black church. There's a lot of good talent.
You guys have definitely got the most musical talent for sure.
But that's what keeps a lot of people in it. That's what keeps a lot of people in the church.
Like a lot of white people like to go to Black church because they love the music so much.
Right, and it's entertaining. And sometimes you also have to ask, well, are they just being entertained by those people? So it's like, you have to ask, that yourself the question. And I know that, there's a lot that that comes along with it. And but for me, the entertainment value does not outweigh, the doctrine the doctrine of subjugation and oppression. And when I listen to those lyrics, there's a lot of, I am nothing without you, I'm serving my master and such. And so when you listen to that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's
the Amazing Grace song is like that, you could say.
Yes, it's very, very subjugating. It reinforces this idea that you are nothing without this entity. You are nothing without this God, no matter what. And the Black churches tend to do this in just such a very soulful and creative way, which ultimately is still damaging to the psyche of our communities. And so this is something for people to think about. And, these are the types of conversations that we need to have. And for some of us who start questioning and who start actually listening, that it doesn't cut it anymore. So there is still some, there's still some creativity and entertainment, value in it. And you can certainly take, into consideration, the musical creativity. But when you really start listening to the words, you're like, ouch.
Yeah.
So hopefully, and these journeys are, some people, they're individual, they may be individual journeys. So some people may have to come to that at their own time. It may take more events like this for people to actually, say, well, I didn't think about it in that way. Maybe I need to reconsider it. So there's a lot, and what people need to understand is that the learning process is ongoing, so that everyone is not going to get it right when we do. So hopefully in the future, more people will continue to, reconsider and reevaluate those relationships, as well as reevaluate what they've seen in entertainment for so long.
True. Definitely something worth looking at, thinking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I believe that concludes the questions. Unless anybody wants to jump in last minute, you can always use the Zoom chat there. But I would say, in the meantime, why don't we give Mandisa one more big round of applause and thank her for that Q&A. All right.
I actually have a quick question for Mandisa, if there's enough time for it.
Certainly. Let me spotlight you. Here you go, Kyle. You're alive.
Okay.
Hey,
Hello,
Kyle.
everybody. Hello, Mandisa. Thank you for your talk. I came across your existence, I think this year. I was just looking for any signs of Black atheism, because I met an atheist group. I just graduated from the University of Central Florida. But
Yes.
But I've only met 2 Black non-believers, but they weren't people that really pursued any truths in that belief. They were kind of just in it. And I see that you actively understand the importance of values and humanism. So I figured it would be great to be able to speak to you and meet more like-minded people. But my question comes back to I'm interested in being in the Black wellness space. And I'm going to be coming out as a Black atheist, probably through social media. Just because I can just feel it. It's just a feeling that I just want to tell the truth.
You start feeling like you just want to, it's coming out.
Exactly.
It is coming out process. Absolutely.
And at the same time, I'm choosing to go back home after college because I want to work on some family healing as far as generational traumas and things go, because who I was before college was not the same man that I am now.
Right.
Before I go and get my financial independence and such things. So my one fear, whether it's irrational or not, is the way that perception of me may affect my parents. So I know my mom I've told my parents already. My dad's kind of cool with it. He kind of lets me do my own thing. My mother, she's quite stressed behind the blind. She doesn't tell me, but I've had combos with my dad, and I know she gets really worried, and she's hoping that I find my way back to God, even though it's been 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So do you have any tips as far as I know it's a very subjective experience, and I don't have any doubt about my ability to figure it out, but I figure if you have any tips, I'm open to any of those.
Yeah. So I a couple of years ago.
Sorry. Can I throw in one more part?
Okay.
And as far as Black influence in the Black wellness community, I also don't want my atheist standpoint to necessarily push away people's ability to want to like listen to me on like health tips and wellness as far as that goes.
Yeah. So here's the thing about, coming to your atheism, actually coming out and openly identifying. So, I was on a segment of Code Switch a couple of years ago, the NPR show Code Switch. And the segment was about coming out as coming out as atheist, especially around the holidays, because that is one of the times where you get together with family. There's usually a lot of prayer before meals. You're dealing with a lot of religious relatives, which can be very, very challenging for a lot of folks. So it's a matter of, one thing you have to remember, that it is about your comfort level. It is not about trying to appease the people around you, because this is your liberation and you're responsible for it. And what you're going to get, we already deal with a lot of religious privilege, right? So we often feel as if we have to walk on eggshells, especially in a predominantly religious environment. So the first thing is that you are comfortable with yourself, whether you tell people or not, that you are solid in that. Now, as far as your parents and even for people, because most of us, as atheists and humanists, we tend to do good work, and we're not trying to convince people to be atheists. I mean,
No.
I know there are some of us who are a bit more hardline about having those conversations, and I do think that they are important. But for the most part, I could care less if you're not an atheist like me. Just don't try to push your beliefs on me, especially when they aren't rooted in anything of value or validation or evidence. So if we can put those to the side, and work together, then that's great. Now, as far as I always encourage people to find your tribe, connect with people, especially in your local. I know we have a group in the Orlando area, and in the Central Florida area, there's a huge community. So one of the best things you can do is continue to engage with other atheists, no matter who they are. And in doing that, you will find more people of color, you will find more Black folks, but it really would be good to find your footing and engaging with other non-believers. Find out how they went through that transition, how it was for them, because for some people, it is very, very difficult. So it's kind of like choosing your battles. And I know there are many people. I know that one of our members, he's in his 50s. He says his mother is still waiting for him to come back to God. I mean, still.
Yes,
So you have people
I've
who are
heard.
still going through it. The one thing is that we are definitely not alone in this. There are a lot of people who are going through it too. So you don't have to fight that battle alone. So definitely continue to engage and network with other people, especially in your area, because they may be able to offer some advice and guide you on how to handle that, or if you just want to vent. Because there are times where you may never be able to have that conversation with your parents without them trying to push you. So it is good to have a support system in other people.
I agree.
And one of the things that I always say is that one of the I am a huge advocate of doing away with this whole idea of tradition. So this idea that you can't choose family is false. You can choose family. So if you're building a new family, and that means you're doing so with your fellow non-believers, that is a good thing to do. So when there, and many of us we host events around the holidays, that even if you may come to for just a little while to get away, then it's good for you to do that, especially if you have the ability to. So just continue to work on your social engagement with other folks, because I guarantee you that will help you a whole lot more in your journey, as well as how to talk to people in your family about your non-belief. And if you choose not to, because they don't have the right to force you to defend yourself. You don't have to feel as if you're defending your position to anybody. So, you know, it is ultimately about your comfort level and what you are, and just let your humanism flow through you. Now, you may have some people in these wellness spaces who try to push that whole, you know, spirituality or God,
Yeah.
and you have every right to say, no, thank you. You know, you
Mhm.
don't have to listen to it. You know, you can say, let's keep it on focus. Let's keep it on target here. And even if that upsets them, that's fine. Because again, there is a privilege that religious people have that really does need to go away.
Mm. Yes.
Great
Thank you for the
advice.
gems. I appreciate that.
Thank you. No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Mandisa, as I announced that we were done with the Q&A, about 3 more questions trickled in. Are you willing to hit those rapid fire, or as
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
detailed as you would like? Okay. Let's see. Yo, if I'm pronouncing Yo V, you are next. So let's have your question, please.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hey, Mandisa. Thank you
Hey.
for taking more questions. I have a question. Some would say it's morbid, but I've noticed that you highlighted on your when you shared the screen that your conference last year dealt with how to deal with an atheist. I took it the way that how to deal with the atheist funeral or life planning.
In the life preparation, yes.
Life preparation. Okay. So I wanted to ask you if you didn't mind sharing how that has been one of my biggest concerns, because I am in a family that's majority Christian. How do I express or make known, or do you even think it matters, what I expect my funeral to look like?
Oh, it matters very much. It matters very, very much. Your family needs to respect your wishes after you are gone. And it may be good, and a good website for that was the sponsoring organization, Compassion and Choices.
Okay.
I'll type the link into the chat. It's compassionandchoices.org. You can leave a directive and state it is good for everyone to have a will as much as possible, and a directive stating how you want your affairs to be handled once you're gone. Because if you don't, and I have seen this happen, I have seen non-believers and their legacies trampled by their religious relatives, family members, and friends because those wishes weren't well laid out. And I mean, we've seen this happen before. I think there was a public figure who did that as well, or their family tried to redefine them as religious once they died. And also it might be a good idea to, if you don't think that your immediate family is going to have your best interests at heart, you may want to start looking and engaging with other people who you think might. So, and this is an area of the organization of BN that I know that that we can start working on, because just as many people entrust their churches with their estates, certainly you can trust or look to entrust your secular organization that you belong to help handle your affairs or to help guide you through that. Because there should be no reason, ideally, your religious family, even if you're a non-believer, should be respecting your wishes. However, you have to prepare for the fact that they might not. So you may definitely want to consider drawing up a living will, and definitely a directive that spells out what your family and what your loved ones should be doing for you once that time comes. Yeah, these are things that we seriously have to think about here. And, you know, it's one thing for us to, and it's very valid that we express our frustrations, but actually doing something and being more proactive about that process is going to be very, very important, because it is a matter of life and death, and how people remember us is going to be very, very important, because I'll be damned if someone is praying at my funeral.
Right. My dad is real big on offering the plan of salvation. I'm a preacher's kid.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. So you definitely have a road ahead of you there, but it's going to be important that you remain that
I'll pray
on that. Definitely.
Right. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Marjorie, if you are there, you are up next. Let me
Okay,
spotlight.
I seem to be hogging the Q&A, but it's just I find this also very interesting, and I'm learning a lot, and I really appreciate that. It has been represented to mainstream observers that a lot of the Black church communities tend to be very socially conservative and really pushing back hard against things like LGBTQ rights and in some cases abortion and so forth. And is this something that your organization is trying to answer, or do I have that wrong too, just like I did about the civil rights movement?
Well, it's interesting because there are a lot of Black churches that do impart conservative politics. There are a lot of them that are very anti-reproductive justice, even though many in the Black community, much as any other communities, can benefit from and utilize a lot of these social services. A lot of the politics of churches are very conservative and pretty much anti-humanity. And but we are now seeing a number of churches and religious institutions that are now more LGBTQ friendly. There are a lot of Black religious folks who have left their fundamental organizations and have joined more, more welcoming spaces. Even though we take issue still with the doctrine, but the communities tend to be just a bit more welcoming there. We're also seeing that amongst younger folks, especially amongst millennials and Gen Z, within the Black community, they're leaving their traditional religions and traditional faith beliefs behind. So whether they're calling themselves more spiritual, they may be identifying more with African-centered religions or something like that. There is a tide that is shifting, and the old guard is going to find that they're going to be left behind with that, because people realize that times are changing. Even if they aren't necessarily identifying completely as atheists, a lot of people are realizing that a lot of the politics that the conservatives are holding near and dear is affecting everyone. So there are some changes that we're seeing here, is because we're actually seeing more women in religious leadership, even though the Bible itself condemns that, right? So it's a matter of them sort of cherry picking what they want to see. But so there is, and we still have to, we that is something that we definitely still push that, and this is something that we're going to address in that discussion that I mentioned earlier. The fact that the Black church in many ways is still upholding white supremacist ideals through the Christianity. So, and this is something that as a community we have to come to terms with, and we really have to start pushing back against. So while we see some things changing, there are still some things that we really, really need to assess as a community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we've got Jeff Sloan, I believe it is. Jeff S., do you have a question? It is Jeff Sloan. Your question, sir.
Okay, I hope you can hear. So my question is, how do you feel about Alabama removing the Confederate flag and replacing it with "In God We Trust"?
They might as well have just kept the Confederate flag if they're going to do that. I mean, my goodness, I am totally against that. I do think that in God, I mean, it's actually Mississippi that's doing that. It isn't Alabama, it's Mississippi. Now, if we look at the state of Mississippi, it is still one of the poor states in the United States, in the Union. It is still very much rooted in religion. It still has a very, very high, pregnancy rates, even though it promotes abstinence-only education. There's very much some contradictions and and paradoxes in that. So of course, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they would put "In God We Trust" on that. And if people studied American history, then they would know that "In God We Trust" wasn't added until what, the mid 1900s, the mid 20th century. And so, and then also too, it's like, okay, we see the current administration trying to gut the Johnson Amendment, which, which prohibits the churches from being politically involved. So, of course, anything in God we trust is just still very, very problematic. Hopefully, with all of us speaking against that, and also with some of the religious organizations that are advocates for state-church separation, it's going to take for all of us to continue to speak out against that. Of course, I'm against it, but it's going to take a united front with those religious organizations that are also against, religion and government, that is going to really turn this around.
All right, then. Well, I think that concludes part 2 of our Q&A. Thank you for staying with us through both of those. Anybody, last chance to raise your hand if you got something.
Before the question, I'd like to note that Black Nonbelievers is also a 501c3 organization. So donations to us are tax deductible, and we also rely on your donations to help support our work. Just FYI.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you. How about we give Mandisa another round of applause, everybody, and just thank her for being here this afternoon.
And thank you all for joining me. This was great.
You may not hear all the applause because they're on mute. I just realized that.
One more time.
Hopefully you saw all those hands waving. There we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
I'm gonna turn this over to my co-host right now, Margaret Downey, and she is going to have some final comments and announcements here.
So to the young lady who was concerned about her funeral, what was the name of that young lady?
That was Yo.
It was Yo. Okay, Yo, I want to invite you to visit my Secular Celebrations website.
Yes.
Secular-celebrations.com. And as a secular officiant, I put a lot of thought into the importance of feeling good about your preparations for your own funeral. And I designed a form that you will find on that website, and it will ask you questions about the kind of music you like, the favorite memories you have, the accomplishments that you have done through your life that you want to be honored for. And a lot of people have filled out this form and they love it. And I keep the form on file, and if a death occurs, I have that information available for all of the relatives. And that way you're gonna feel better about being honored in the way that you want to be honored and remembered. So I hope you'll visit that site.
I will.
And everybody else, you're invited too.
mysecularcelebrations.com?
Well, it's just www.secular-celebrations.com.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and that's thank you, Margaret, because that also does bring up the importance of humanist and secular celebrants, because they are out there, and it is good for you to to connect with them as well.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of resources out there.
Yes. So I want to take this opportunity to not only thank Mandisa Thomas, but to also thank Michael Stephen Martin for being our co-host today. We really enjoy bringing you these Zoom presentations, and there are more to come. Please join us on Saturday, August the 1st at noon Pacific Daylight Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, when we will host Professor Christopher Cameron. Mandisa mentioned him many times during her presentation, and he was quoted in that forward for her article in the Humanist magazine. So we're going to have him live and in person. Please join us. He will be talking about Black free thought from slavery to civil rights. So it's going to be a great history lesson. Please see the meetup description for more details. But now, for those of you who would like to stay and socialize, we will take a 5 to 10 minute break and meet you back here, right here on Zoom. It's a little after 4:30 p.m. where I'm located, so I'm going to consider this a happy hour. So I'm going to go get a glass of wine and come back and chat with you all a little bit more. You can ask me questions about free thought and other things. So thank you all for attending, and I'll see you back here.
See you all in 5 minutes.
All right.
right, Michael, I'm gonna head, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna head out now.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I really appreciate everyone who joined us today, and it was an amazing event. Thank you once again for inviting me, Margaret, and thank you all for joining us. So, y'all have a good rest of your day.
Love you,
Mandisa,
Mandisa.
it was a pleasure. It's nice to meet you. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.